Hello, and welcome to the Steps to Happiness show on Soul Liberty TV. I'm your host, Teresa Greco, happiness coach, author, editor, writer, educator, and Reiki master. Are you ready to follow your joy and tap into your inner happiness? Then the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, my guests and I explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well being practices that can help lead you back to the happiness within you. The happiness principle for today's show is removing the blocks to your joy. Like many people, I believed happiness was something you searched outside yourself. Happiness was found in my possessions, positions, titles, degrees, experiences, and relationships. Happiness was a point of arrival. I'll only be happy when, or I won't be happy until, were phrases I completed in different areas of my life. We all want to be happy. In fact, it is at the base of everything we do. But I now know that being happy is very different than feeling happy. To feel happy means to view happiness as a transient emotion you feel when, for example, circumstances in your life are going well for you. You've achieved a personal or professional goal, or you're participating in activities you enjoy. This is pleasure, which is short lived. For when things outside yourself take a turn for the worst, you're then left feeling negative emotions, and the happiness you were feeling just hours before now feels gone, but it's not. For when we're connected to our authentic selves, we know that happiness is our essential nature. It's a state of being rather than a state of mind. Happiness is at the core of who we are. Therefore, it is impossible to ever lose the happiness within you. So, why is it that we don't feel happy all the time? It's because the world has led us away from who we really are, and in turn has us feeling a whole host of negative emotions like anger, frustration, envy, and shame. Is it okay to feel those negative emotions? Absolutely. Part of our soul's human experience is to feel other emotions that we don't usually feel when we're solely unconditional love. What's important to remember, however, is that we don't have to unpack our bags and stay in those negative emotions. We can allow ourselves to feel the emotion, but then take steps to return us back to the happiness we are. Through the living of our life, we began carrying a sack on a stick, a bindle, full of burdens over our shoulder. As long as we carry this sack along with us, there will always be something that is blocking us from feeling the unwavering happiness in us. Unwavering happiness means that we can be happy even when our external circumstances may not necessarily be the way we want them to be. For example, we can still be happy even when we can't do all the things we were doing before the pandemic began. We can still choose to be happy by making it a priority to find ways we can reconnect with the happiness within us. So, if we're not feeling happy, that's a clue that there are things that are blocking us from feeling the happiness within us. The work begins by identifying what the blocks are. But why do we do the work? Well, we do the work because our happiness is always in direct proportion to the weight of the sack. What I mean is, if you put your happiness on one side of the scale and your sack of burdens on the other, the amount of happiness you feel is in direct proportion with how much baggage you're carrying. So, when we do the work, we remove the weight on the one side and our happiness increases on the opposite side. Therefore, our happiness quotient increases, where we continue to feel happier and happier the more we work at removing the burdens from the other side of the scale. Today's show is about identifying some of the blocks to our happiness, as well as discussing the strategies we can use to remove the blocks so that we can connect to the happiness at our core. My first guest on the show today is a yoga coach specializing in women's health and trauma. Julie Thayer, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to be here with you, Teresa.
Thank you. So, Julie, I'd like to start off by discussing the blocks that you carried with you through your life that essentially prevented you from feeling the happiness at your core. That my belief is happiness is our essential nature. It's who we really are. But if we are not feeling that, there are blocks then that exist in our life that are preventing us from feeling it within us. And so I'm going to get you to share your story of how of the blocks that you carried with you.
Okay, well, it goes way back because I recognized when I was quite young that I felt differently about the world. And if I look at what the blocks were, one of them in particular, as I came to understand it later on in my life with counseling and much reflection, is that I am, in fact, a highly sensitive, empathic person. And as a young person, I had no understanding of what that meant or what boundaries were to support me in managing that experience. So emotionally, I found the world very overwhelming because I felt everything like deep, 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 particularly relative to the significant relationships in my life at that time. So that was very overwhelming. I was definitely a perfectionist um, in everything I did, whether it was at school. If it was less than a 90, I was beside myself. If, relative to sports and athletics, I played basketball, volleyball, I was a high jumper, and I captained my teams. Like I could show up, but it was almost like I was wearing masks all the time. Like
Mm.
underneath that person that for all intents and purposes looked like she was like rocking it and living the dream. Underneath it all, I was very sad, empty, never felt like I was enough. And again, just always striving for that perfection. So no matter how many baskets I scored or how many blocks or spikes or how well I did high jumping or what records I set. And I did all of those things. I almost felt like an imposter, like I wasn't worthy of that.
Mm.
And that even those successes were not enough. And so that was, I definitely feel another block. Another block in particular, I would say had to do with my shyness. I was an extremely, extremely shy person, particularly as a teenager. And so much so that when I moved to a new school when I was in grade 11, I literally ate lunch in my math room for the first 6 months because I could
Mm.
not imagine going into the cafeteria. I was very, very fortunate that I had sport and basketball and volleyball. And when I was on the court, I was in my element. I was able to really step into who I was, play with heart, soul, make a contribution, lead my team, um, and and just have great success. Like I would have been lead of the year, like all of these things that, for all intents and purposes, you would think I was having, particularly the experience of a lifetime in high school. Underneath it all, I was really a wreck. I did not, again, feel that I was deserving of those things. Now, I'm going to just track back a little bit because I also think that it's important. One of the very pivotal moments in my life that I think really shifted my perspective of myself and my worthiness is my sister, whom I adore and love, was a gymnast, and she was built like a dancer. She had legs from here to eternity. She was tall, like she's about a half an inch to an inch taller than I am. She's long, she's lean, and just like at that time, just just exquisite, like in terms of how she moved. And she's my younger sister. And I remember a very significant family member saying to me, "You're not like Sarah. You're going to have to really watch what you eat and really make sure you take after your body or you're going to get fat." Because I am this muscle bound, like, I felt like a bull in a china shop relative to my sister. Like, again, like I just thought I am just like, I did gymnastics for a little bit and I hit the floor like a ton of bricks, like just boom, boom, boom. And she was just light and, airy fairy, and everything was so great. And I remember in that moment, my whole perspective of my body shifted. And I really became to dislike my body immensely, to the point where I did exactly what I was told to do. You need to look after your body, you need to watch what you eat. So I did that in varying degrees. I started as a bulimic, I ended up anorexic, and I struggled with that for a very significant period of time in my life. And at the age of 15, I knew something wasn't right. I'd always had sort of this level of sadness that I carried with me. And at that time I wouldn't necessarily have identified it as depression. It wasn't until later, again, upon reflection and looking back, I would say that all started for me probably around the age of 11, where it really shifted for me. So I sought out counseling to address the eating disorder issues. My parents didn't know. It was my, like, best kept secret. And so finally I was like, I need to understand this. Why do I feel this way? Why is this happening? I need to get a grip, because intuitively I knew I'm not serving myself well. There has to be a better way.
Mhm.
So I sought out counseling, and I saw these counselors for several years as I moved through my teenage years and into early university, and worked very, very hard at overcoming the eating disorders, which was sort of the first priority, as far as I was concerned, because again, just the self abuse of it was, it was
Mhm.
literally killing. Like, it was just not good. So I was able to sort of navigate that and begin to heal from the eating disorders. And again, that was daily diligence, really understanding, like, rebuilding my relationship with food and eating, all of those things. And of course, being an athlete, kind of balancing
Mhm.
the exercise, and the sort of demands on my body relative to that.
Mhm.
And that's something I'm really proud of, from the standpoint that, I knew I needed help, and I sought it out because I always knew there's got to be something better than this experience I'm having. Like,
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
get it.
Mhm.
And but life continued to happen, and I continued to struggle, and I've always kind of asked myself this question: did the eating disorder come first, or did the depression actually come first? Like, what fed did the depression feed the eating disorder, or did my experience of the eating disorder invite sort of the experience of depression? My feeling is that the depression led to the eating disorder, and just my self perceptions and my sadness at not being enough, not being perfect enough, not getting good enough grades, all of those things, and letting people down in my life, letting parents down, and I was the firstborn in the family, which oftentimes they
Mhm.
say comes with certain challenges as firstborn, and I think that certainly could be somewhat relevant to that experience. But I continued to struggle, and it would be one of those things, Teresa, like, it would be two steps forward, three steps back. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and I'd sort of inch myself, baby step it forward until I got to a place where I started to feel some grace and equanimity. Before that happened, my depression hit very, very hard. So earlier in my life, in my late teens and in my mid 20s, I had 2 suicide attempts, which now in hindsight, I look back definitely as cries for help. Um, I don't believe at that time that I sincerely wanted to die. I just wanted to stop experiencing life so intensely. I was exhausted. I was tired. I'm like, if I have to live the rest of my life like this, like, that's no good. That's no fun. Um, so definitely at that time, there were more calls for help. All the way along, I continued to challenge myself. Once I was able to move through sort of the critical phase of things, I was able to again continue to seek out counseling and support. I explored different medications. There was a time they thought I was bipolar. There was a time they thought, I was, um, you know, sorry, the word is failing me. Suffice it to say, I went on medications for those things and it ended up making everything worse. And so I came off of those meds. And so I kind of went through all of these various doorways, trying to find my way home to myself. And, you and I, we in our conversation have spoken to that is, really there's so many layers that get layered upon us as we move through life, be it expectation from others, relationships we're navigating, how we're moving through them, who we're surrounding ourselves with that either fill our spirits and our souls or actually diminish our spirits and our souls. And this realization that we actually have the power within us. And it is really about choice and how we choose to move through the ebb and flow of life. And as a younger person, I just did not have that capacity or understanding of the power that I had within myself to nourish my well-being and to fill myself up and to create a robustness relative to the magnitude of this life experience. Like, I literally refer to it as magic and mayhem, this life. And there are certain things we have choice over, and there's a whole lot we don't have control over that arrives in our life and literally commands and demands our attention. And at that point, it really does become our choice as to how we show up to meet that experience. So in my earlier life, without the capacity or understanding, being highly empathic, highly sensitive to the world. Like, I literally didn't think I was going to live past my 30th birthday. I didn't think I was going to be a mom. I didn't think I'd ever, get married or be able to have that type of experience in life. And then eventually, it began to shift. And but that's from literally probably from the time of 15 years of age to the age of 32, where I worked tenaciously at trying to understand who I was and how I could utilize my sensitivity and my capacity for empathy as a gift. And now, looking back, having moved through life, it is my sensitivity and my capacity for empathy that is my gift. It is why I am here. It is why I think yoga has been such a calling for me. Why I feel that the drama and trauma of my life experience has led to this exact moment in time. And without those experiences, without seeking out perspective and understanding and support, um, it would have been a really difficult journey. And so I'm so grateful. And it sounds so ironic because, it's, you think, wow, like, and I had mentioned earlier that in my earlier years, I'd had 2 suicide attempts, or what we'll call cries for help, because I really feel like those what they were, now that I look back. By the time I turned about 32 years of age, all of that work kind of culminated in this moment for me, and life really shifted, and I stepped into the driver's seat of my every way. You know, for somebody who didn't know that she'd ever be able to hold a job down because her depression would just wipe her out, and suddenly I was working in this incredible job, corporate job that I thrived in, and had success from a career standpoint that was, just so reaffirming, and built so much confidence in my capacity to stand on my own 2 feet in every way. And, I became a mom. I had my son. He was born in 2005, and got married. And, for all intents and purposes, and I don't like using the word, but I'm going to utilize it here, is life began to normalize. I'm not going to say it's
Mm,
normal, but it began to normalize, where again, even though there were ups and downs, there was joy and there was happiness, and
mm,
life was happening with me and for me, and it was incredible. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm here, I've got it. And I did all sorts of neat things in this sort of 10 to 13-year window, where, I went into business, uh, with my sister, and we 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 navigated all sorts of ups and downs, and I handled them all with aplomb, like with capacity, and, tough stuff, like really tough stuff. But I had done the work, I'd filled the bucket, I had stepped into the driver's seat of my experience, and whether there was joy and happiness, or frustration, disappointment, heartache, loss, I was able to meet it and move through it until September 2017, my life imploded in every way. Some was in my control, some was not within my control, and that is life. And it did not occur to me at the time that I would not have the capacity to handle it, because I'd literally had 13 years of moving through life. I often use like this idea: when we meet life with grace and equanimity, it means we kind of do this with it. We get kind of buffeted. But when we're not in the driver's seat and life is buffering us, it looks a little more like this. Woo! And you're along for the ride. So I had this period of time where I just moved through the ups and downs, ebbing and flowing with what was happening,
mm,
finding the joy, embracing the opportunities to learn, to grow, to fail, to stand back up again, to keep going. And I did. So when life imploded in 2017, and suffice it to say, I won't go into all the details here because there were so many ways it went wrong, but it went wrong. And again, some of it was my own responsibility. And of course, life happens around us. People make choices, decisions that impact us, and that it's literally beyond our control. So, September 2017, life implodes in every way possible. And I think, okay, I can do this. I've done this before. I can move through this again. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. And then it was like, there's just this moment where I was like, I don't have this. And the fall from where I felt was here was hard and fast, and crossed the line to the point where there literally was no light. So I went from light, and I think because of my previous history, it was like a carpet got pulled out from under me. I hadn't been keeping my fingers on the pulse of all the things that I would do to support and self care myself: movement, yoga, nourishment, sleeping well, all of the tools that I had, you know,
mhm,
acquired over a lifetime of work. And I'd almost taken it for granted, like my well being for granted. And so some of the daily habits that I would have practiced, I had compromised somewhat. So when it all imploded, there was a deficit, and I wasn't ready to meet it. And I described to you when we spoke that literally it was like the light was snuffed out, like hope, like light was just snuffed out like that. And I made it till November 30th, trying to keep my head above water, trying to keep going, trying to do the work. And it was my birthday on November 30th, and I attempted my life on November 30th, 2017. I just did not feel that I was deserving or worthy of celebrating a birthday. And I had literally convinced myself that my family and loved ones were better off without the complication of healing in their life, because I could not imagine, having navigated the first journey of depression and so on, and then coming back into this place. I think I just could not imagine that this is going to be my life again for the rest of my life. I can't do this all over again. It was so hard the first time. And so I was so tired, and it's like I just wanted to turn it all off. And you know, and the reason I discern it is that I actually did want to die. It wasn't a cry for help. Like, I was done. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not cut out for this life. It's just too much. And I ended up in the hospital recovering. And I think the greatest thing I struggled with that was my ambivalence. I was very fortunate to have been found and brought to the hospital and literally given a second chance, even though at that time I did not know that I would come to appreciate that. But I remember sitting on the hospital bed, and my son was sitting on the end of the bed, just wanting to love me and, be present with me. And I'm like, what is wrong with you, Julie? Like, why are you so ambivalent? Here is your child sitting on the end of the bed, and you don't know if you're happy or alive or not. You're just kind of reconciled to the fact that it's not this time. It didn't happen this time. And I remember speaking to my psychiatrist at the time and just saying, I feel guilty in some ways, I feel shame, but what I feel almost more than anything is just this ambivalence about being alive. And he said, that's okay. That's unwell, Julie, that you're conversing with. It's not well, Julie. And so be patient. You're in a safe place, and let's do some of this work. And so that's sort of where that happened. So I started to work very hard at the healing process again. And again, it was 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And I always kind of equate it to like the little engine that could, right? That's just like, okay, keep going. And even though you kind of fall flat on your face, or feel like you're back at square one, keep going. And one of the ways I did that was I started walking every single day for at minimum 1 hour. I would at first I couldn't use any music because any music just like was too overwhelming emotionally for me to deal with. So I literally used the mantra with every step I took for 1 hour, sometimes more. The mantra as I took each step was healing, recovery, healing, recovery, healing, recovery, healing, recovery. That went on for months. And eventually, I put music on and could listen to music. And eventually, the mantra started to shift and change. And, or was just, I could think about other things and be hopeful and find joy in the surroundings and in nature. But it was a very, very long road with many, many setbacks. And I was incredibly well supported by the hospital that I was checked into. I had a team of healthcare professionals supporting me through the process, social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, nurses, fellow patients in the ward at the time with me. Absolutely extraordinary human beings. And one thing I really realized is that mental health does not discern in terms of who. It's all walks of life, and the connections that I made and the healing that I feel I went through as a consequence of interaction with fellow patients and shared experience was absolutely profound. And and in some ways brought tremendous perspective to my life in terms of the support that I had available to me, and the recognition that not everybody has that kind of opportunity. And I was very fortunate to have that experience. And many people, I call them my earth angels, walking with me at the worst. And
Mm.
there's it's incredible how you discover who those people are in your life, right? Those earth angels, those ones that, yes, they're with you when you're at your peak and you're rocking life and everything is great and everything else, but they're also the ones that are with you when, literally, I will say, I was like one of the worst versions of myself possible at the time.
Mm.
So the return to joy and the return to happiness. And I love the word, like one of the words that I utilize, or two of the words I really love, one is and one is equanimity. Because I think, if we are going to live this life fully, completely, step into the experience, we are going to experience, and in some cases, we may experience more discomfort, more pain, more loss as a consequence of stepping fully into life than we will those moments of joy and magic and pleasure, um, because that is life. And what allows us to suddenly appreciate the joy and the happiness is that we also know the discomfort, the pain, and the loss.
Mm.
And so, how do we do that? How do we find that balance and find the boundaries that allow us to not just survive this life, but really thrive in it and celebrate it?
So beautiful, Julie. Now, if somebody wants to connect with you after the show and be able to find more information about the program, where can they go?
They can go to, so I am on Instagram at Julie Thayer Yoga. All my handles are basically at Julie Thayer Yoga. So you can find me on Facebook just under Julie Thayer, or at Julie Thayer Yoga on Facebook pages, or on Instagram at Julie Thayer Yoga, and website juliethayeryoga.com. And all my courses are hosted by Thinkific, and you can look that up by Julie Thayer Yoga. So everything's just Julie Thayer Yoga. And I would certainly welcome any questions or conversations. If something has resonated with anybody in particular today, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am here and would just be delighted to have conversation with you and connect.
Julie, thank you so much for sharing your very powerful story with us and explaining how you came to a place of love, peace, and happiness within yourself
Mhm.
and in your life.
Thank you, Teresa. It's just been so good to be here today. Thank you for holding the space for me to share my story and experience. And it's just been a really wonderful time with you. And I'm so glad that we've connected. So thank you so much. Incredibly grateful.
Stay with us as after the break, I'll be speaking with Janine, who is helping people to identify and work through their blocks to happiness. I'll see you after the break.
Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
Welcome back to the Steps to Happiness show with Teresa Greco. I'm excited to introduce my next guest. She's a spiritual self love and soul alignment guide. Janine Fournier, hello and welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, Janine, I'm excited to have you on the show today because We are going to talk about how do we identify the ways that we might be blocking ourselves from feeling the happiness within us. That if we're not feeling happy with ourselves in our lives, it's important that we make time to remove the blocks or to find the path that that are really preventing us from feeling the happiness that's always there for us to tap into. So, what are some of the ways that you are helping people to identify the blocks that they have?
Yeah, so I love talking about this because I absolutely 100% believe that we are responsible for our own happiness, our own well being, and that we really can create the life, the love, the happiness, whatever it is that we want from desire. People and they have a desire or a want, and we're looking at, okay, well, what is really in the way of you having this right now, or being or doing this? We look at the first step always is awareness. Once we know what it is we don't want, we have so much more knowledge of what it is we do want. Quite often, though, what we do as humans is we stay focused on what we don't want. And that itself right there keeps us on that same path and creates essentially a block for us because we're only looking at one thing, one area, instead of what else is possible, what else is out there. And I love using analogies like roads and train tracks and things like that, things that have a somewhere to go, a momentum we can build. And so the first step really is awareness. What is it that you want? What is it that you truly desire? And then if you don't have that or you're not seeing it in your life right now, what could be the reason for that? And then we would look at what those reasons are. And a lot of that comes from looking at what are the thoughts that you're continuing to think? Are you continuing to think about how you don't have it, how you actually are really unhappy? And if you're only focused on the unhappiness, then it prevents you from being able to see what's possible or how you can get to feeling happiness. And also, what are you focused on outside of you that you believe is contributing to your unhappiness? And where can we then shift that focus? So, awareness, and then looking at what are the thoughts that you're thinking? What are the beliefs that you keep believing? And beliefs really get rooted into us mostly from a young age, into that unconscious mind part of us. And we create thoughts around those beliefs, and those that really anchors those beliefs in. So sometimes we don't even realize that they're beliefs that aren't actually true for us. We've just taken them on as true. And then looking at what what's next. What 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 is needed for you specifically as an individual, with your experiences, with your traumas, with where you're at right now in your nervous system, in your body. What do you specifically need to be able to see differently, think differently, believe differently, feel differently? Because it is very much a very individual experience.
What if we just think of an example? What would be a scenario that somebody would come to you and say, Janine, I'm feeling blocked in this way, and then once we've once we're where I where you can identify or understand that there is a block there, then what are some of the strategies that we might look at then to maybe dive deeper into identifying what the underlying reasons are for that block?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. This is something I just love working on with people is somebody having a desire for their purpose or passion in life, right? So they really want to, become this superstar, this writer, this whatever it is that desire on their heart. And there's so much not happening to move towards that goal. The desire's there, the belief that like this is possible for me even is there,
Mhm.
consciously at least, right? So looking at, okay, well, if that's the desire and you're not moving towards that and nothing is in motion for you to actually achieve that, let's look at what could be happening. And so one of the, once we become aware, okay, this is what I want, this is, where I'm at, it's not happening. What are the thoughts and the beliefs around that? Oh, well, it's really hard. It's a lot of hard work. It's very rare for
Mhm.
somebody to achieve that level of success. Um, things like, and then we would look at where does that come from? Where do those
Mhm.
thoughts come from? Whose voice is actually saying that? Is that what you believe? Because if you've conjured up this dream, it's got to be for a reason. And so we have to look at what outside influences have come in to kind of cloud over that and make you believe it's not possible. And not only that, but what would you have to maybe give up or feel like you're giving up or sacrificing in place of having that? So in the place of somebody who really wants to become, let's
Mhm.
say, a singer, there's going to be a level of notoriety with that, some fame that might come from that. Okay, so you're giving up a bit of your privacy. You're giving up a bit of your personal life to be in the spotlight. That's a lot for a lot of people, especially someone who really likes their privacy and their alone time. And so what will happen is a value will be placed more on not having the thing than actually having the thing. And to get to where we want to ultimately be, the value needs to shift towards more of the thing. And the desire needs to shift towards that. And
Mhm.
the other thing is that because humans are so much about moving away from pain more than they are about moving towards pleasure, often the pain of not having the thing has to become greater than the pain of staying where you are
Right.
with, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for an example like that, which I've worked with somebody recently on, is, you know, looking at, oh well, this is what my parents said to me, right? Artists struggle. That's not a real
Mhm.
career. You can't make a lot of money doing that. And if you place all of your value in those things and not in achieving your dream, you're going to move towards those things. And so happiness just
Mhm.
becomes kind of, it's just outside of your reach.
Mhm.
And so identifying, whose thoughts are those? Whose beliefs are those? Whose voice is that actually? And where does that even come from? Because there are
Mhm.
people out there right now doing exactly what you want to do. So, what maybe did they need to think and believe about themselves and about what's possible in order to get there? Because it's not impossible. And
Mhm.
it's not outside of the realm of possibility for any single person who desires it. It's a belief system. And then from that belief system, what actions are you going to take? And so once
Mhm.
we look at, oh, okay, well, here's the beliefs that I've been thinking. And then we start to question them, get curious about them. Is that actually true? Is that true for me? Or is that
Mhm.
somebody else's belief about what's true? Do I need to carry that? And then because a belief is something that's been happening on repetition within us, it's not something we can just say, okay, I see it, it's gone. Right? I've done that so many times in the past before I really understood the work, where it was like, okay, well, now that I know what I believe, and now that I'm aware of my stuff, it's gone. And then I wake up the next day and it's not gone. There's some work to do around that. And that includes dissecting the original belief, kind of taking it apart until it has no more power left, and then reassembling a new belief. And that repetition of the new belief that you want to believe, that feels in alignment for you and not something that's way out there. Because if we go from, here I am working my regular 9 to 5 job, but I really want to be a rock star, and we go from, me here right now believes that I am that, it's a huge leap. And it's really hard for the brain and the ego to get there without, I like to call it, a bridge. So I now believe this is possible for me, or I'm willing to see the possibilities in this. I'm willing to believe that this can happen for me. And then maybe it's, while I'm taking these action steps, while I'm doing this inner work and making these transformations.
Okay, so let's go into those strategies then that you then use with your clients. So once you've figured out what those beliefs are, how do we go about rewriting them so that so we have new ones that actually serve us and bring us towards the life that we want?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I've recognized, and that it's, one of the first steps I work with people on, is regulating the nervous system. And this is something that was lost on me for so long in doing this work and transforming my own life, that now I see how important it is, because we experience life through our nervous systems. And if our nervous system is in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode, when we're in that heightened state of arousal, we're in survival mode. And survival mode doesn't care about your dreams and your desires. It only cares about keeping you alive. And so if we try to just, while in a mode of, I don't have it, and I'm freaking out about it, and I feel really stressed out, and I'm in, that fight, flight, or freeze mode, we cannot implement new thoughts or beliefs or changes in that state. It's not possible. So the first step is always, let's get that nervous system stable. And that comes with doing some breath work, doing things like meditation of different varieties, yoga, some slow movements to just reconnect you and remind you that you are safe, and it is safe to be in your body, and also in your body achieve your dreams, or have the love life you desire, and have a little bit more money, or whatever it is that feels a little bit scary to your nervous system, because it's not your normal, right? So that's the first step of the strategy. It's so important to be there, because otherwise we're kind of just, we're throwing things on top of it, and it can't really stick, it can't sink in. And this is where I love tapping as a strategy as well, to identify any emotions or fears in the way of us really feeling that level of happiness, with or without the thing, right? Because it's never about the thing, it's about how we feel about the thing. But using, the EFT, emotional freedom technique, to tap out any emotions. I think also one of the biggest keys is acceptance. So when we're so much wanting to be or feel something differently, and we're pushing it up against what we already feel, it's really hard to create a change, right? It's like pushing against a door, and it can't open because we're pushing against it so hard. It's like, if we just move back and accept, this is where I am, this is how things are right now, while knowing what we want and where we're going to go, things flow so much better. And that allows the nervous system to kind of just chill out a little bit, so that we can implement new ideas, new beliefs, whatever. So the nervous system regulation, the tapping to move emotions, and then the sitting down and being with yourself and getting out a journal and writing. And whether that's like a specific journaling practice with targeted questions, and I have, beliefs practices, inner child practices, all of these different modes of getting somewhere within the journaling. And sometimes it's just sitting down with the journal and letting out everything that's inside, or asking, that whole part of you to come through and provide some answers or some insight. That's a really important part too. And journaling intentionally. So a huge part of my work is intentions, setting an intention every day for how your day is going to go before it's even begun and what's going to happen in your life. So, from something as simple as I'm going to have a really smooth drive into work or wherever I'm going today, and everyone's going to greet me pleasantly, and I'm just going to feel so much love today and offer love to others. And, I'm doing this, that, and the other to achieve what I want to achieve. And I'm feeling how I want to feel. Intentionally journaling and writing out what it is we're moving towards. So if it's that relationship that we want, not focusing on not having it, but setting the intention that it's here already, because everything that we want out there is created in here first. So setting that intention. And I believe that writing plays a massive role in us creating what it is that we want to create in our lives. And appreciation, things like that, are really, really important to start to shift from where we are to where we want to be. And I think appreciation is one of the biggest shifts that can kind of fast track us into that feeling of happiness. When we're just appreciating what's around us, what's within us, everything that has come and that's going to come, and suddenly we feel that feeling come from inside. And I think that's a really important key. This is something big, especially when I'm doing coaching around relationships, is when we're in a relationship with someone, they are a really great inspiration for feelings of love and happiness, but they don't create those feelings. We do. They come from within us. If we sit back in the absence of anything or anyone, and we just close our eyes and think about a memory that's happened or that's going to happen, we can feel those feelings start to bubble up. And it's so amazing that we don't actually need anyone or anything to do that for us. We can do it for ourselves. And that's so powerful. And it reminds us how powerful we are. And then that doesn't mean that we don't then create those things with other people. It's just that we don't attach to needing them as much. And I think we can appreciate them so much more without that need attachment.
And it really speaks to, the statement of we can choose to be happy, even when our circumstances outside of us may not be necessarily the way we want them to be, that every day we can wake up choosing how we're going to feel about ourselves, about our lives, about people that we're going to interact with, situations that we're going to be in. And in the choosing that we're setting that intention as well. So lots of really good points. Is there anything else that you wanted to suggest
in terms of making those changes? I think too, actually physically making changes. It really speaks a lot when we move the body in a different way, because we are also experiencing the world through these bodies. And if we're just getting up every day and doing the same thing and kind of being in the same environment, it's hard for the brain to really then set in, and that set it into our cells and our nervous system that something has changed. So it doesn't have to be anything big, but it can be doing something in a different room in the morning, or having a little switch up in the morning. Maybe you exercise before you do this, that, and the other. And I think also how we nourish ourselves really matters. So having a nice big glass of water first thing in the morning instead of something like coffee that's got caffeine that's going to stimulate the nervous system right away, and just
Right.
making little shifts in the way we physically do things as well. When I work with people and, they're kind of, their minds won't stop focusing on one thing, often I'll say, change your physical location if you can. Change the environment, even if it's going into another room or splashing some cold water on your face or going for a walk, right? And even like something like jumping on your rebounder while you're saying your beliefs and your affirmations, right? Like kind of getting the body into it. And that's, sort of what tapping does, is it allows us to kind of tap into certain meridian points in our body, but it allows us to physically tap in while we're saying these things, reminding us that it is that whole mind body experience as well.
Janine, how can people connect with you after the show?
You can find me on Instagram at janine.af, and also on Facebook, Janine Fournier. You can find me there.
Janine, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing the ways we can return to the happiness that we are.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I'm going to leave you with the thought for the day. Research has shown that physiologically, we feel an emotion in the body for 90 seconds. That's just enough time for us to watch the process happening, feeling it happening, and then watching it go away. If we're continuing to feel the emotion, it's because we are thinking thoughts that are re-stimulating the circuitry that is resulting in us feeling that same or having that same physiological reaction over and over again. We can see this response in young children. Well, they'll be crying one moment, and once distracted, in as little as 90 seconds, they're laughing over a new toy or a change in scenery. I'm sharing this with you because our essential nature is happiness, but the world leads us away from this. If we're not feeling the happiness within us, it's because there are thoughts or beliefs that are creating an emotion that can lead to behaviors that are preventing us from feeling that happiness. Recognizing those thoughts and beliefs and working on changing them by connecting and nurturing all aspects of ourselves, that will help us to return to who and what we really are. Thank you for joining me today on the Steps to Happiness show, and I look forward to being here again with you next week.
To connect with Teresa Greco after the show for coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements, you can visit her website at teresagreco.ca or by email at stepstotruehappiness@gmail.com, or follow her on Instagram at teresagreco_steps to happiness, or on Facebook at Steps to True Happiness with Teresa Greco.